Hello and welcome to LionWing Talks, a weekly show where we discuss all things LionWing, tabletop games, Japanese games, and localization. I'm your host, Bradley Hailstorm, founder and president of LionWing. This is episode 23. This is going to be a Wild Hunt Festival jam-packed news episode. So, normally, if you've been following along, you know that we kind of have a format here. We start things off, I answer some listener questions, and then we move into our project updates. Now, typically, on a typical night of LionWing Talks, I would go through each of the projects, and I would provide everyone with an update on where we're at with each of those projects. Tonight's going to be a little different, though, because, in case you hadn't heard, Wild Hunt Festival's fulfillment has begun. So this episode, during the project update section, is only going to be about Wild Hunt Festival, because there's a lot to talk about. Some things you might expect me to talk about tonight, given that the game is in fulfillment, and then some things that you may not have expected me to talk about tonight. So, this is I guess you could say, a Wild Hunt Festival themed LionWing Talks, and I can't be more excited to discuss this game with everyone. So, this game has a special meaning to LionWing. It has a special meaning to me, and I'll talk about why that is during the project updates section. But it's very exciting that this time is finally upon us for many reasons, obvious and maybe not so obvious, and we're going to talk about those tonight. But first, as always, we're going to get to our listener community submitted questions. Before we do that, if this is your first time joining us, hey, thanks. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for checking us out. If you're not joining us live, that means you're watching me on playback right now, which thank you for that. So this show happens every Wednesday night without fail, 9 p.m. ET here on Twitch. If you can't catch it live, which I encourage you to do so, because normally there's conversation happening in the chat, and also it's an opportunity to ask me questions in real time, catch me off guard with any questions you might have, and I will answer those things right there and then. But if you can't catch us live for whatever reason, there are many reasons why you wouldn't be able to do that, you can always find us the next day on YouTube. So, which that's probably what you're doing right now if you're watching it on playback. Thank you. If this is not your first time and you're returning to the show, you are a repeat viewer, hey, thanks for coming back. Always appreciate our regulars. You all are awesome. So we're going to go into our listener submitted questions first, and we've got some good ones tonight. So let's get right to this goodness. The Martyr. So all these questions are coming from Discord, which, by the way, if you want to submit a question for me to answer on the air, join our Discord, drop it into the LionWing Talks channel, and I will make sure that I put it into my show notes. Of course, if you don't want to join the Discord but you want me to answer your question in any way, you can always drop your question through social, either through a tweet, Facebook post, a DM, whatever means necessary. You can drop it to us on the campaign page as well of whatever Kickstarter from whatever game you may have backed of ours. So I'm always looking at all of those things. So the Discord isn't the only way to get to us, but it tends to be the easiest way for me to gather all of the questions and throw it into my show notes just because it's in one place. So on to the Martyr's question. This came from Discord. And they say, how do you feel about TTRPGs, specifically Dungeons and Dragons, being so mainstream? So, how do I feel about TTRPGs? I have mentioned, on a number of episodes now that tabletop role-playing games are my preferred tabletop game, my preferred type of tabletop game. I love board games, I love card games, I love miniatures wargaming, but I have to have a favorite, and tabletop RPGs, or as you've called them, Martyr, TTRPGs, are in fact my favorite. I like the storytelling that goes into them. I like the improvisation that goes into them. I like being able to tell and weave together a tale with multiple characters over the course of a long or sometimes short campaign. I like the customization that comes along with TTRPGs, especially something like Dungeons and Dragons, where you really get to make your character your own and watch them grow over a long period of time. I like the lore of tabletop RPGs, and in the hands of the right dungeon master, I don't think that, this is just my opinion, take it for whatever it's worth, but you're asking me the question, so I'm going to give my opinion on it. I don't think that there is a more powerful form of storytelling around the tabletop when you're engaging with a tabletop game than with TTRPG. I think board games, especially board games that have a heavy narrative component, like a Madara, like to a lesser degree, Wild Hunt Festival, they are fantastic ways to engage with a property that has a strong story, that has strong lore, that has great world building elements. Wild Hunt Festival has such rich lore and such a great story, but you're going to not be able to engage with that type of game in the same way that you'd be able to engage with a TTRPG. The world's just more vast. There's more dynamic elements to it because the story is constantly evolving, and your choices are what's driving all of that change in the storytelling. And yes, there are plenty of tabletop games that are sort of a choose your own adventure style tabletop game, but you're always on rails. Now, whether you make choice A or choice B, well, that's cool because like you do get some say in it. But at the end of the day, a board game, you are only ever going to get some say. Whereas a tabletop RPG, you get all the say. With a good game master. Some game masters come into a game and they have a very specific agenda and they are going to ensure that they tell their story and that you're a part of it. And I don't necessarily like that type of game mastering. And that's, if you're that type of game master, that's totally cool, by the way. Like TTRPGs are such a cool thing because they mean something different to everyone and people engage with them differently. And so, again, these are just my opinions. But I think for me, the best type of game master for me is the one who will come with an outline, a structure of a story, maybe some story beats that they definitely want to get in, but they're going to let you do most of the painting. You know, they're going to give you like the key elements of the canvas and they're going to fill in a little bit. But mostly you and the other players, you and the other PCs are going to be the ones painting that canvas. And I love that. I love the freedom of expression. I love the creativity. I love the social interaction. That's why I love tabletop games in general, regardless of the type of tabletop games. The tabletop game we're talking about, I just like the social element of it. And TTRPGs, I think, offer the highest level form of that social complexity, social interaction, social responsibility, social storytelling. I think that's I think that's just so cool, and it can't be replicated in any other type of genre in the tabletop scene or outside of it. It's just really special. It's really magical. There's nothing like it, and I think people are beginning to see just how magical TTRPGs are because in the past I would say 5 to 6 years, and definitely over the past 3 years, we've seen TTRPGs just explode in popularity. The pandemic, I think, accelerated that popularity because it was a way to stay connected with people because it's much easier to play a TTRPG over Discord or Skype or Zoom or whatever, just because you're not engaging with a lot of physical components. And so it's easy for, 6 people to be up on different blocks on the screen and you're still basically getting the same experience, just not being in the presence of those other people. So the pandemic, I think, actually helped that genre quite a bit, but it has been on the upward trajectory now for 6 years. It's been on the climb for a while now. This goes back just 6 years, but really beginning to see it make its way back into popular culture, beginning to see people talk about it in a larger sense than just the TTRPG community. I think really speaks to the health of TTRPGs right now, and I don't think they're going to go anywhere for a while. And that's exciting to see a type of media regain popularity and then not show any signs of slowing down. I think it's an exciting time to be a fan of tabletop RPGs. So that was a long-winded way of saying I feel great about tabletop RPGs in the mainstream right now. I think I hope it continues. I hope it continues to expand and become even more part of the pop culture zeitgeist. I think that stuff is important. So on to your second question, Martyr, because you had sort of a follow-up here. With the commercial success of streamers and Twitch channels in that medium, TTRPGs, like Critical Role and Acquisitions Inc., would you, me or LionWing at large, especially with your recent lore and world writing for Testament, ever consider releasing a supplement book for D&D influenced by your Japanese gaming interest? Yeah, so I would. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink. 1 second. Let me mute my mic because no one wants to listen to me drink. Yeah. So, Testament's interesting. You bring up Testament. Testament would make a great tabletop RPG. It's got the setting, like the setting is built in. You don't have to do a lot of work with like figuring out just kind of the broad strokes of Testament setting. It's already there. I would be especially interested in something like that just because I've put in so much time into writing Testament's lore from nothing. I think I've mentioned in past episodes, but if you haven't caught those past episodes, you're hearing it for the first time. Testament, hardly like any lore made it into that rulebook. But I wrote a few dozen pages of lore on that game. Things people will never see. I illustrated maps, really kind of fleshed out its social systems and its ecosystem in many ways. I would love to do something more with that at some point. I think it would make a lot of sense to do that. Kuro is very generous with his IPs. As I've also mentioned before, Kuro, he'll create a world in very generic strokes, and then use that to build his game around it. Like, he is a game designer. He's not like a world builder. I mean, Kuro did produce a TTRPG kind of in the beginning, the very beginning. I think it was one of his first few. I think one of the first few Kuro games was a TTRPG. But aside from that, generally speaking, he creates a narrative backdrop just so that he can figure out what to do with game mechanics. So because of that, he is very generous with his IPs. He told us early on in Testament's development, like, hey, if you want to do anything more with like this world, this lore, these characters, like, have at it. I don't care. Like, I have no attachment to any of this stuff. Like, run it by me, because like at the end of the day, it is a reflection of my game. But that's mostly just a formality because I don't give a shit. So it was cool that he gave us the freedom to kind of write whatever stories we wanted to. And the funny thing is like none of that made it into the game, other than you get a little bit of that with the backstories of Lunana and Reardane, which, he didn't, those characters were created for the English release. So like he didn't care what we came up with there. So you got a little flavor of expanded Testament lore. I would like to do something more with it though, since I've already written a lot of it. I think Wild Hunt Festival as well would be a great campaign setting. I think you could do a standalone TTRPG with either of those games. I don't think they would have to be 5e compatible or 5e supplements or anything like that. I think you could probably create systems just for those games, and I think that would be super cool. So I would very much like that. Next question from Rogue Knight. So I mentioned, I think in the last episode last week, that I was in the middle of selling a house and buying a new house. So Rogue says, congrats on selling the house with the new Kickstarter and Maid Knight Saga up to played afterwards and possible house move. How's your anxiety level? It's much better now that we've sold the house. But we still haven't bought a house. So, the anxiety level's pretty high right now. We got a lot of stuff going on, personal stuff, and a lot of LionWing stuff too to keep track of. So it's just like a lot of moving parts, a lot of things to keep track of at the moment in all facets of my life. But hey, I like this kind of thing. I would not have started LionWing when I did if I wasn't ready and willing and excited by the prospect of having to juggle multiple things that are really important to me. So I opened up LionWing right as I had my first kid. Literally 2 months after I had my first kid. My wife was like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm doing it. So I do think I perform well in high stress situations. So yeah, my anxiety level's high, but I'll just use it for motivation. Rogue also says, assuming Kickstarter keeps with the 3 project rule, will this mean we won't see Maid Knight Saga until G&G is fulfilled? Yes. So Maid Knight Saga won't be able to hit Kickstarter until Gun and Gun is fulfilled to the majority of backers. So, which is fine. That's a fine timeline because that's kind of the timeline we're working on anyway. Project Requiem, our next Kickstarter, will launch in about a month, and then we'll want to put some time between that project and Midnight Saga anyway. So whether Gun and Gun was fulfilled tomorrow or fulfilled in 6 weeks doesn't really matter, because it's not like or if it was fulfilled in, I don't know, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, it's not going to matter, because we're on a timeline right now where Midnight Saga is launching on Kickstarter in the fall, and it's not really going to be affected too much by Gun and Gun's launch, because Gun and Gun's fulfillment, because Gun and Gun will have already been fulfilled by the time that we would be naturally getting ready to launch Midnight Saga. So there that is. Hey, we got some people in the chat. Sorry, I haven't checked the chat in a while. Hey, Frank, Jake, gonna catch it on YouTube. Hey, sounds good. Lannison, hey, welcome back. Lannison, I know you are a recent viewer of this show, so I appreciate you coming back. Sin, what's up? What's up, bud? I just called you bud like you're 7 years old. I did not mean that. Here's the problem with having children, is everyone is buddy or like honey or cutie, depending on if I'm talking about my daughter or my son. So like, I'll be having conversations with someone at work, and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, hey buddy," and I'm like, "What? I just called you buddy, like you just hit a triple in t-ball." So if I ever call you bud or buddy, try not to be offended. It just you say the word so many times that it just gets sort of ingrained into your vernacular, and you can't help. It's like muscle memory. It just comes out. You greet someone in the same way that you greet your son, or the same way that I greet my son. Hey, bud. Big dad energy, Bradley. Oh yeah. Big dad energy indeed. You always got to have that. Although, admittedly, I'm very tired tonight. So my daughter did not sleep. She was doing so well there. She was sleeping through the night. Mostly like we had like a week and a half where she was sleeping like 6 hours a night, and I'm like, hey, fucking party, this is golden. And then we had last night where she was up like 4 times. So maybe not big dad energy right now. This is kind of like low dad energy right now. I'm having to really like amp myself up to bring this enthusiasm. Lannison, glad you're enjoying the streams. That's awesome. All right, so let's get back to these questions. All right, the Martyr also had another question. Are your t-shirt choices for the show a conscious effort or just it's what I had on? So mostly the latter. It's mostly like, oh, I was already wearing it and I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change. I'm too lazy. However, there have been some nights when I have sat down and I'm like preparing for the show, and I throw on last week's show just to kind of catch myself up on what I talked about. 'Cause I'm like too busy to be looking through actual show notes. I'm doing something else, but I want to make sure that I'm not like retreading certain ground. And so there have been a few weeks actually when like I'll throw that on because I want to listen to it real quick, and I'm doing something and I'm like, oh shit, I wore this shirt last week. I can't do that. So I will go out of my way not to wear the same shirt 2 weeks in a row. But that's about the that's the most effort I put into this. It's funny that you mentioned that about the shirts, because this shirt actually, this Teen Titans shirt, it is random story. This is my favorite shirt that I own, and it's also the oldest shirt that I own. So I bought this shirt 17 years ago. I was in high school when I bought this shirt. I have been out of high school for a long, long time. And it still fits. It still fits just the way I want it to. So I was probably a little skinnier in high school, but it mostly still fits. So it looks like this isn't like distressed. This isn't like a distressed pattern. This is actually distressed from 17 years of wear and tear, and I don't even know how many cycles through the washer and the dryer. So this part it's completely faded off, but I absolutely love this shirt. So I bought it the summer going into my senior year of high school from Hot Topic, actually, and it's lasted all this time. So there's a random story for you. Got another question in the chat here. Okay, since you have a sort of roadmap for future LionWing projects, at least for the next year or two, when you pull an audible, like with Midnight Saga and Project Requiem, how much more work is involved? How much of the quote-unquote shifting in projects is pre-planned or at least considered to avoid a total crap storm? That's a good question. So I wish I would have seen this question beforehand so I could more thoroughly answer, but I'm going to try my best to answer it here on the spot. So we typically are working on 2 projects at once. Now, the past several months, we've been working on 3. At one time, we had 4 projects going on at the same time. But we're typically working on 2 simultaneously. But that doesn't necessarily mean that just because we're working on Project A and Project B, that they are at the same points in their development, just because maybe we started development around the same time. So depending on the complexity of the game, depending on the type of game, depending on what needs to go into its localization, you can start projects A and B at the same time. And then 3 months in, Project B is right here and Project A is all the way up here in terms of progress. So I say that ultimately to say it's nice working on multiple projects at once, because in the event that something happens and you do need to swap out a project for another and pivot in another direction, you can. Like, it would have been really, really detrimental, and I don't want to say disastrous because that's an overstatement, but it would have been not good if we were only working on Midnight Saga and then the stuff with Midnight Saga came up and we had to pivot away from it and we had nothing to take its place. Like, to me, that would have been a really bad case scenario. I would not have been happy with that. And it's not the main reason, but it is one of the reasons why we work on multiple projects at once, because you never know what's going to slow something down. You never know what kind of obstacle you're going to run into. And certainly, like, although you build in and pad in enough time for shit to go wrong in development, you never know like how bad shit's going to go wrong in development. Because some things that you come up against when you're in localization are just problems that you expect, and maybe you couldn't necessarily foresee them. But the problem is within the realm of what you know how to do and what you know how to work with. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, I've never really dealt with this exact thing before, but I've dealt with similar things. So I think we can work our way through this kind of thing, even though we hadn't really foreseen this kind of problem coming up. But then, there are some things that come up that just you never saw coming up at all. You've never been in a similar situation as the problem that's now cropped up, and you don't have a playbook to use in order to solve the problem. So it's like in localization, and probably in most industries such as this, there are things there are things you don't know, and then there are things you don't know. Which is why you do need to have a little bit of kind of foresight to say, maybe we should be running multiple projects, because you never know when you're going to run into that one obstacle in that one project that's going to halt development for weeks or months. So it's not the main reason why we work on 2 projects at once, so that we can quickly swap if we need to. But it is a reason that we absolutely consider. So it worked out really well with Midnight Saga and Project Requiem, because Project Requiem has been done, and it was finished before Midnight Saga. It was just kind of sitting on the back end, and we had prioritized Midnight Saga for contractual reasons and various other reasons that I won't get into. But it made it really easy then to say, like, okay, so we want to make sure that we present Midnight Saga in the absolute best light possible. As I mentioned last week, I've invested a lot of money in that project. I want to make sure it's a success. So it's like, all right, we're going to delay it, because a delayed game is eventually good, and a rushed game is rushed and bad forever, that kind of thing, the old Miyamoto quote. So it was great in this situation, because it's like, well, shit, we got Project Requiem. Like, it was coming next. It's done. This is the easiest thing to transition to. Now, the only thing that we didn't have done with Project Requiem was the Kickstarter. We had the, development on Project Requiem has been finished for a while. but the Kickstarter wasn't, because we're thinking like, oh yeah, like we're gonna do Midnight Saga's Kickstarter. We'll have some time, then we'll transition to Requiem, and boom, like we're good. No, this was like, all right, so we can easily get this game in there because the game itself is done, but shit, now we gotta build this Kickstarter. And as I've mentioned either in the last episode or the one before that, sometimes you spend the most of your time in this business putting together a really good looking Kickstarter. And so that's where the majority of our work went when we swapped in Project Requiem. It's like, all right, we're all of our work now is going to be focused on the Kickstarter. So it was an easy transition in the sense that the game was already done, but challenging in the sense that like, oh my gosh, like we just finished the Midnight Saga Kickstarter. Now we're going right into another Kickstarter. There was actually like 2 weeks when we were working on both the Kickstarters, finishing up Midnight Saga's Kickstarter. Cause it's like, well, shit, we're basically done. Let's just, even though we're not going to launch this for a couple months, like, let's just go ahead and finish it while we're still in the mindset of like Midnight Saga. Let's just finish it. And at the same time, we got a new timeline and a new deadline for Requiem. So let's just do both at the same time. So that was a little crazy. But even had we not overlapped, going from like back to back Kickstarter build outs is pretty taxing. Building the Kickstarter page is probably my least favorite part of this entire process. I'd take like in the trenches localization editing, in the trenches QAing over putting together the theme and the vision, and then actually putting together the assets that correlate to that vision of a Kickstarter campaign any day of the week. I just hate that part of it. So it was really mentally draining for me to go back-to-back Kickstarters. Hopefully that answers your question. Next question for Bitcoins. What would you do if you had to run an episode without any viewer questions? I like that someone replied to this almost like immediately and said in parentheses, he would only talk for 1 hour and 10 minutes. And that was Sai, and Sai is, that's absolutely right. So, before I got into this industry, I've shared that I was in the social work industry and I was a psychotherapist. So like my days, 40 to 50 hours a week, I was talking with people. Now, as a therapist, you do probably more listening than talking if you're a good therapist. But it's a very communicative type of environment. And then when I got into management and I was, providing management over other therapists or like, therapy programs, more programmatic stuff, I started getting into like trainings and workshops where I was the point person for training all of our staff, training all of our therapists, but then also providing workshops in the tri-state area to, just therapists and social workers and that kind of thing. And so, there would be weeks when I'd have a 40-hour training in 1 week where I would go in Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day for an entire week in a room full of 100 people and provide these workshops on, how to do psychotherapy. And literally I would go into these week-long workshops and I'd have like a PowerPoint presentation of like 40 slides, which roughly equates to about 1 slide an hour. So I say all of that to ultimately say, for better or for worse, I think if you ask my wife, she would say for worse, I have been granted the gift of gab and I can just talk and I do just talk. It was a required skill in my past life, my past profession, and now for this show, I am pulling on that skill set that I honed over the course of 12 years or so, 12, 13 years. So I think if there were no listener submitted questions, I would still find a way to make the show an hour long, even if I had very little project updates to provide. So there you have it. It does make things easier when there are questions because it's always nice to have a compass, to give you the direction you want to go in. But like I said, I'd go up and talk for 8 hours with very little information, and I would just do a lot of it off the cuff because I think that's how I present best. So I would talk if y'all didn't give me anything to work with. Af, what's up? Thanks for joining. Okay, so I'm going to move into I think that's it for our questions, our listener submitted questions. Let me just check real quick. Yes, indeed. I don't think I missed any. Appreciate the questions this week, folks. If you got any questions as I go along through the show, just drop them in the chat. I see we've got some folks now in the chat for sure. Thanks for joining us, everyone. So I mentioned at the beginning of today that this was going to be a Wild Hunt Festival themed LionWing Talks. I go through the questions, go through my answers, and then we would move into the project updates, but really it would just be one project update, and that was just Wild Hunt Festival. And I'm doing that because, as most of you know by now, though I haven't made an official announcement on the Kickstarter, I'll be doing that either after the show or tomorrow morning. Fulfillment is in its active process right now for Wild Hunt Festival. So finally, the game that was meant to be delivered in December of 2020 is finally being fulfilled, is finally being shipped out. Games have been shipped out already. So this has been such a long time coming, and this has been so exciting. I said at the beginning of the show that this project, Wild Hunt Festival, has been special for me anyway. It's been special for a number of reasons, really. Sorry, I'm just pulling up some notes here. So folks in the chat said, an entire year worth of wait is coming to an end. That is right, Sin. Yep, closer than we've ever been, says Retro. Yes, my catchphrase is always true, and it's never been more true than right now. We are closer than ever to getting Cradia Wild Hunt Festival than we ever have been before. This project has meant a lot to me because, so we launched Sinome Coliseum R. That Kickstarter launched in June or July of 2018. We fulfilled in April/May of 2019. And although we started working on Testament that following fall, in terms of like an outwardly facing company, we kind of went on a hiatus. We did 2 video games. So we launched, Sinome went to backers and then to retail in April or May of 2019. We launched our first PC game right around May/June of that year as well. And then we launched a second PC game in early 2020. In early 2020. But for all intents and purposes, like Sinome kind of ended our board game development for a while. And so like you didn't really hear from us in this industry for a while. Yeah, like 6 months after Sinome was fulfilled, we started working on Testament. It probably wasn't 6 months, probably more like 4 or 5. But the point is, you didn't hear about us a lot in the tabletop industry from like mid 2019 until February 2020. We went on like a bit of a hiatus. And really, the hiatus was even longer than that because, we finished working on Sinome in 2018, obviously. So it had been a long time since we had touched anything with board games. So we came back with Testament, right? Testament had a long development cycle. So when we brought Testament to Kickstarter, though, it was through a co-publishing deal, right, with Japanime. And anytime that you co-publish a game, it's never fully yours. It can't be. By the contract, it can't be fully yours. And although working with Japanime was a fantastic experience, they were super easy to work with. Heather was awesome. Everyone there was awesome. Eric and Jackson, everyone. But I worked primarily with Heather. She was great. But even if you're working with a great company, like, and you're co-publishing a game, it's still not fully yours, no matter how great the relationship was with the other publisher. So we came back after a hiatus, and it was like, all right, here's Testament. LionWing, we've worked on this game tirelessly for a long, long time. I talked about the many sleepless nights that I had working on Testament. And so we come back after being kind of AFK, and it's with a game that's not, fully ours, not being recognized as fully ours. And it's like, oh gosh, our first one back in a while, it feels a little different. Sinome was all ours. That was our baby. Testament, although we had done all the work for however long, once you get in front of the public and people are like, oh yeah, that's a Japanime game, or some people are like, oh, it's a LionWing game, or most people are like, yeah, it's both their games, right? It just feels a little different. So Wild Hunt Festival, though, that was our first game back from Sinome. That was ours. That was our localization project. That was ours to publish, that we had no help with. Everything that we did with Wild Hunt Festival was through our own decision making. Testament, because you're co-publishing, the other publisher gets a say in certain things, right? And in certain ways that the game's presented, and certain components that are included or replaced or what have you. Wild Hunt Festival, it's like, no, this is all ours. And so it meant a lot to me as the owner of LionWing to have this game be ours. It was really important. And that it be recognized as a LionWing game. I mean, don't get me wrong. All of these games are not ours. These are the designers' games. We're just helping bringing them to, we're bringing them to the West, or we're bringing them to the English market. But in terms of being the publisher of the English version, and being the one who's translating the game and playtesting the game and QAing the game and all of that, you do have a sense of ownership. Even if the core design and the assets are not yours, you still feel like you're a part of that process. And it's important to feel a part of that process, at least for me, because that's when I do my best work, and that's when I can inspire others to do their best work, when they feel like they have ownership of the project as well. And so Wild Hunt Festival, it was just this really special project, not only because I love the game, not only because I think the game has incredible appeal to so many different people across demographics. And not only do I think the game is extremely imaginative in terms of its visual presentation and its aesthetic, it's a game that we could really say, like, this is a LionWing game through and through. And so when we had to delay Wild Hunt Festival, certainly you all, backers, what have you, were bummed. And some would say probably the backers were bummed the most. But I would actually argue against that. I would say that I was probably bummed the most because of how much I identified with this game, and how much I identify this game with LionWing, and how much of myself I see, in this game, and the decisions that were made about the game, from components to editing and all of that. And so, and I'm sure not all of those decisions will be for everyone, but they were our decisions, right? And only our decisions. And so I was probably the most bummed when we had to delay Wild Hunt Festival. And then when we had to not really know when we were going to be able to get games to backers. I originally said I wanted it to be in like kind of that May window. I think that's what I said when I first announced the delay of the game. Like, oh, I think we're shooting for kind of like, a May window here. And here we are in July, going into the second week in July. So like I was probably the most bummed out of everyone. So to finally have this game here, it's a big step for LionWing. And it means a lot to me because of, also how many tireless nights that were put into making this game. So, it's with great excitement that I got to announce this week that fulfillment has begun. It's the news I've been looking forward to giving everyone for all of 2021, obviously. Because the pandemic has wrecked so many things, this process was not an easy one to work through. Because communication at every level was pretty bad. And I don't blame anyone. I don't fault any one particular person or entity or anything like that, other than maybe U.S. Customs. I'll put some blame on U.S. Customs a little bit. But aside from that, I mean, even with the communication, I can't really fault any one person or place or entity because everyone's kind of working in this same shitty environment of the pandemic, and everyone's just trying to do their best, and everyone's swamped, and everyone's, overworked and underpaid and understaffed, and it's just it's an absolute clusterfuck. So it was a frustrating experience. And then to finally, get that email from Funnigan, our fulfillment center, last week, like, here's the deposit invoice, the piece of documentation that had been holding us up, for weeks, essentially. There it was, finally in my inbox, so immediately, I think that happened on Friday. I think I got that. I immediately went to the bank. I wired the money. I didn't want any more setbacks. I didn't want anything else to stall this process. And then to get the, to get the confirmation of that wire from our contact there at Funnigan saying like, all right, confirmed. Thanks so much. We'll be in contact early next week. And then Tuesday morning to say like, hey, here's what's going on. Fulfillment's going to start tomorrow, which was yesterday. Fulfillment's going to start today, which was yesterday. And I don't know if they said packages would start going out yesterday. I don't know if they did though, but I do know they started going out today. So shipping notifications have already started going out. I've seen a lot of people in Discord say like, hey, I got my shipping information, which is awesome. So let's talk about fulfillment stuff and what's going on right now. So, I wanted to note that just because fulfillment has started doesn't mean that you're going to get your package right away. It could take weeks to get your package. I mean, that's just how things go. I mean, supply chains are fucked right now. Packages are taking longer to get to certain places. Packages that used to take a couple of days are now taking a week or more. Packages that used to take a week are now taking 2 weeks or more. And so it's always been an unpredictable environment, especially depending on the courier, but it's even more unpredictable right now, obviously. Although things are getting better with how the world is acclimating to the pandemic at this point in 2021, they're still acclimating, right? And so because they're still acclimating and they haven't acclimated means that things are going to go wrong for some people. And that's just the reality of the situation right now. I wish it wasn't, but it is. I should note that packages are being shipped out in the order in which they were confirmed. So like if you were one of the first folks, like as soon as we sent out that email, for the pledge manager saying like, hey, confirm your orders or the pledge manager is open. If you confirmed early, you confirmed your details, shipping information, et cetera, et cetera. If you confirmed it early, you're going to be one of the first ones to get it. If you were a late locker, someone who took a while to lock in your order, confirm your shipping details, confirm, if you wanted add-ons, et cetera. If you were late, and especially if you were past the deadline that I gave several updates back, then you're going to be the last to get your stuff. Obviously. So where you fell in that process of when you locked your order, that'll ultimately dictate how quickly you get your stuff. Now, that won't always be the case. There will be some instances of where like, oh, I was late backer and hey, I got my shipping notification already. Good for you. I am happy for you. That is not the norm though. All right. So North America. So U.S., Canada, and Mexico is all being fulfilled from the same place at the same time. So that's being fulfilled from Indiana. Surprisingly enough, only like an hour-ish away from me, from Cincinnati. The fulfillment center said packages started going out yesterday. I think mostly they started going out today, and they'll continue going out today. Like, just because you live in North America doesn't mean your package was sent out today. It also doesn't mean that your package is going to be sent out tomorrow or Friday or Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. I mean, just because you're in North America, and just because it seems actually that North America has started fulfillment first, even though Europe, the EU, and Australia had all of their pallets long before our stuff ever got through customs into our fulfillment center here in Indiana. Regardless of all that, it seems like North American packages have started going out before other territories in many cases. But just because that's the case and just because you live in this region doesn't mean that your stuff's going to ship out this week or next week. Again, it really depends on a multitude of factors, including, when you placed your order and when you confirmed your details. So, it's possible that packages show up for some people starting tomorrow. I probably wouldn't bank on that. I would say Saturday, early next week, that's when you should count on. I'm not going to give any firm details because I'm not in a position to give those details. And even if I was, I wouldn't want to give them right now with this current shipping environment. But I think, the very end of this week, early next week is a safe projection for some. Like I said, other people, you won't get yourself for 2 weeks or so. So there that is. I would also say that, if you don't get your package like this week or next week, don't panic. Your package probably hasn't been lost to the lost packages gods. Just give it a little bit of time. I just put up today on the website a support form. It's at the top nav bar under game support. You can go there, and if you have issues with components or your stuff just not showing up, you can fill out a form there. You can drop it to us, and then I'll get back to you. So definitely use that if your stuff hasn't showed up in the next couple of weeks. So EU. So the EU has been a bit trickier because it's always a bit trickier just because there are various logistics that go into delivering to multiple different countries spread across a wide berth, right? But our EU fulfillment, the fulfillment center is in France. So depending on how close you are to France is going to ultimately decide when you get your package. So if you're close, awesome, you'll be getting them soon. I think EU fulfillment started today. But just like with North America fulfillment starting yesterday, I think it's actually going to start tomorrow in earnest. The same thing with Australia. So I would say for the EU and Australia, the next couple weeks, you can expect your packages. Those are probably some overestimations, but I would rather overestimate right now than underestimate. Of course, there will always be the case of where it takes 4 weeks for your stuff to show up, and I'm sorry for that, but I have no control over that. And then the rest of the world, so backers that don't fall into like Australia, EU, or North America, fulfillment in those regions will begin next week. So that'll be kind of like the last area to fulfill. But still, I mean, next week is 5 days away. So let's see here. What else do I got? Keep an eye on your inbox. So a lot of you have already said that you've gotten shipping notifications that your stuff is either getting ready to be fulfilled or has already been shipped. But just keep oops, sorry about that. Just hit my desk. Keep an eye on that. I think that's important that you do that right now. And then, as soon as your stuff shows up, hey, tell us in Discord. I want to know when people get their stuff. I want to see pictures of your stuff, better yet. I've got packages coming to me. So some things that I'll be seeing in person for the first time, as I mentioned. So I'll be excited to see that. We also put up, speaking of like fulfillment stuff, you can now, so you can't late pledge any longer, obviously, but you can pre-order now. So we're going to be fulfilling pre-orders starting in August. So if you pre-order now, you'll be one of the first. You'll be one of the first to get your games come August once backer and late backer fulfillment has finished. So it'll be our first pre-order. We haven't done a pre-order on our new web store, so I'm really excited to be able to offer that. That just went live today, so that's cool. I think that's all about fulfillment for now. Yeah. So let's talk more about Wild Hunt Festival stuff, though, because we got more to talk about than just fulfillment. I mean, fulfillment's great, right? It's an indication that your stuff's on the way. And at the same time, it's kind of boring, right? Like, it's like, okay, my stuff's being shipped. Cool. It's not here yet. So let's talk about some stuff that might be a little bit more actively exciting, and that is some DLC news. One second. I'm going to take a drink of this real quick. All right. DLC. So you know that there are 3 DLCs coming for Wild Hunt Festival in total. Well, 2 more are coming because we've already done one. Our first DLC was our winter-themed DLC, and now we've got our summer-themed DLC coming, which is DLC pack number 2. So we have never created as much Kickstarter content for a game than we have with Wild Hunt Festival. You know, Testament, we created an extra mode. We created some extra characters. Gun and Gun, component upgrades, some alternate art stuff. You know, nothing that impacted like gameplay though, right? Embryo Machine, we added quite a bit. You know, scenarios in the Lone Wolf mode, which is cool, and the new battlefield, but still not as much as we added through the Wild Hunt Festival campaign. You know, scores of characters, scores of content that we delivered through stretch goals, and now through the DLC. It's another reason why I feel so connected to this game, because I've worked on it for so long, and I've worked on so many different things of it, and I've been consulted along the way by Liner Note and Ramo and his team, which has been awesome. You know, some designers, when they create additional content for you, they don't really include you in that process, and I totally get it. Totally get it. No offense taken. But Liner Note was super cool in wanting us to be a part of the process, especially because it was our campaign that was allowing us to create more content. So another reason why I'm so in love with the Wild Hunt Festival. This DLC, the summer DLC, is officially titled Pumu Rhapsody. So we haven't announced this yet, but I know there'll be at least one person in Discord who will appreciate this. But if you remember all the way back in August/September, late summer, early fall of last year, we ran a Wild Hunt Festival fan contest, and we got some really, really awesome submissions to that fan contest. All sorts of stuff, from stories to gameplay additions to just fan art of Wild Hunt Festival characters. It was so cool, and so many people turned out and really produced for that. And like, that was so validating in terms of like, okay, people really do like this property. People really do like this game. They like this world. One of those fan contests sort of stood above all the others. All of them were great, right? Especially the top 5. So much work and effort was put into that. But there was one that kind of stood out above the rest, and backers thought so too, because ultimately backers decided who won that contest. And the individual who won that contest created, they were really kind of smitten with one of the boss characters named Lemugia, who is this boss who summons these little slime creatures called Pumus. And so this particular individual who submitted this character of Lemugia, I mean, went through so much work to create their character board, their skills, the names of those skills, the backstory, all of this stuff, right? I mean, so much thought was put into this, and rightfully so. They won the fan contest. We took that to Ramo-san and the Liner Note team at large and said, all right, so here's our contest winner. What can we do with this? We knew that we were not going to be able to transfer everything 1-to-1. That was never going to happen, because you know only the designers know their game, right? Even if you're a fan, and especially at that point when you haven't seen all the assets, you can only create a concept about a game character so much, because at the end of the day, it's like, well, I'm taking guesses here, because I haven't played the game and I haven't seen the full game. And so we knew from the start, you know, that this individual's submission, we weren't going to be able to use it wasn't going to be like a 1-to-1 conversion. But what we were going to do is we were going to take the essence of that, and we are going to work it into DLC number 2 in a way that made sense with the game, with the game's rules, with the game's world, with the game's like lore rules, as in addition to its mechanics and gameplay rules. And so DLC 2, Pumu Rhapsody, we will now be introducing playable Lemugia. And it's time to talk about that. So, sorry, someone's having a conversation in the Wild Hunt Festival channel and Discord asking any news on Asia/Philippines. Haven't received any shipping notice. Yeah, so like I just said, Asia/Philippines is going to fall into that rest of the world category, and fulfillment for that region, for all of those regions, since it encompasses many regions, will most likely start next week. So, okay, Puma Rhapsody, DLC number 2. Let's start showing off some stuff about it. I would like to say that this DLC feels pretty different from DLC number 1. So DLC number 1 was winter themed, was sort of like holiday themed, and it had a lot of choose your own adventure elements to it. Had a lot of story cards where it's kind of like, do this. If you do this, go to this card. If you do this, go to that card. That kind of thing. It introduced a new boss, but I don't think a new character. This one though, here's what we're getting. We're getting a new challenge mode boss, a new character, and 3 new items, in addition to some lore stuff. But the new character, Lemugia, playable Lemugia, and the boss each have their own new mechanics. So we're introducing some new mechanics with this DLC, which I just love. It's not like these DLCs are like throwaway. It's not like it's like throwaway content. This is like, substantial, content that we're providing folks with new mechanics and new ways to play the game, which to me is always the best kind of DLC. Let's see here. Let me respond to this in chat real quick. Okay. So I want to show off what this DLC looks like. Here we go. So here is our first new character that we've added to the game since the stretch goal characters, and this is Lemugia. So technically she's a summoner, which means she's a healer. So prior to this DLC, we have two healers, Manad and Galateo. They handle healing very differently, 2 different types of healing. Lemugia is also a different type of healer. So just because she is of the healer type, it means if you're the type of character or the type of person who likes to play healers, you're going to have to acclimate to her style because it's not going to be the same healing style as the other 2. I mean, you can think about it as healers in MMORPGs, Final Fantasy 14 and the like, where, with FF14, you've got your white mage, you've got your astrologian, and you've got your scholar. I think that's right. I never played that healing class. I was always a white mage or an astrologian, and then of course you've got your new healer coming out. But each of those played and healed very differently. And it's the same situation here. Are we? Oh, I got a question here. Are we getting the backsides of DLC? I have a lonely, partially glued up PNP waiting for its other half. Wait for confirmation on that. I don't have a hard confirmation on that tonight, and I don't want to give you an answer without having a hard confirmation. I don't foresee that being an issue, though. I don't foresee that being an issue that we include that. It wasn't included in the files that Liner Note gave me, but that doesn't mean I can't just ask for it. And I don't think that, maybe I'm making assumptions here, but I don't think they would care about including that. I think they just didn't because they were like, we're not printing these right now in physical form, so we don't need a back. But people, ideally, you're going to be downloading and printing out the DLC. You probably want a back. So, wait for confirmation, Shinsuke. I think we'll get you taken care of. So, Lemugia, I don't want to talk necessarily, I don't want to reveal her summoning and how it works just yet. We are still in the process of translating these files, editing them and all of that. And I want to leave some of the surprise to when we actually give you all the DLC files. But just looking at the card right now, you can see that something's different, right? So, as I mentioned, this character comes with their own mechanic. They're going to come with their own separate card, very much so like Luca. So Luca has his own mechanic, and therefore that mechanic is represented on a physical card in the game. Playable Lemugia, summoner version of Lemugia, is very much so the same. So you'll have to learn a new mechanic for her, but it'll be well worth the wait. You can't see it from here because you only get the headshot on these character boards. But Lemugia's full art, which we'll be revealing at some point, is super cool. It's summer themed. She's like on a beach. She's eating a popsicle, which you can see the popsicle there. It's just really, really great art. And I think people who like playing healing characters are going to love the way that this summoner healer plays. So interestingly enough, she has no natural resistances. So she's vulnerable to every physical ailment and every mental ailment, which is unfortunate for a healer. And at the same time, she has a high HP value, higher than both of the other healers, if I'm remembering correctly. Let me pull that up real quickly. Let's see here. Okay, so she has the same HP total as Manad. So they both have 11, which is still high. I mean, I think the average is right around 9 or 10 for most characters, which is good though, because I mean, they're healers. They're a little squishy, right? So they need to be able to endure some punishment. But yeah, it's interesting because yeah, she's vulnerable to every type of ailment in the game. So I think she's going to be a little bit more of a challenging healer class to play. I think Manad is probably the most straightforward healer. Very much so like single target heal, pretty reactionary. Galateo requires a different strategy. I think without knowing all the ins and outs just yet, because the translations aren't 100% finished, I think that Lemugia is going to be probably the most challenging healer to play as, which is fun. I like that. It'll add a new element to the mix. All right, so that is Lemugia. I'm so excited we are able to add another healer to the game. I pretty exclusively play healers in MMOs. If I get bored and I'm like, all right, I need to not play healer for a while, I'll play a tank. I never play a damage dealer, but I'm a healer through and through. So getting a third healer for Wild Hunt Festival is like, chef's kiss, right? Mox, yes, you only play healers too. I'm glad to meet another one of us. All right, so let's talk about the boss. The boss for Pumu Rhapsody is so good. It's so good. Here we go. So this is Summer Buster. Summer Buster has so much HP. So much HP. And so Summer Buster is a challenge mode boss, which means it's harder than your typical story boss. And that is pretty clearly and quickly seen on its life board over here, its life totals. So not only does it have 30 HP, which is a lot of health, but shit, man, it's rolling a lot of dice often. Like you get some reprieves in here. You might catch like a 2 or right here, which I think it's just 31, 14, and 8, where they're only going to roll 1 dice. But like for the most part, you're looking at an average of 3 to 4 dice on most rolls. Just a beast. And this particular character is it's just awesome. I mean, okay, so if we just look at the art here, if we just bask in all of this art's glory, this is a Pumu wearing a watermelon as a helmet, and it's trapped inside a life preserver, and it's got these giant golem arms, these rock golem arms with claws. I was like, Oh my god, this is the best boss design I've ever seen, maybe. It's so ridiculous. And his name is Summerbuster. Um Liner Note never disappoints. Never disappoints. Uh Such creativity from that team. It's wild how good they are at what they do. So Summerbuster is going to kick your ass, and Summerbuster comes with its own mechanic as well, just like Lemugia plays with or comes with her own mechanic. Uh, yeah, Summerbuster gets its own card, which you can see right here. So what you're looking at here is a dial that ramps up over time and makes Summerbuster's attacks stronger. So the later into the fight you get, the harder Summerbuster is going to hit you, with up to +5 to its attacks. So again, this is challenge mode boss. It's meant and supposed to kick your ass. Yeah. So we've only done some light play testing because the translations are not final, and the editing is not final. So we've only been able to play test in limited capacities, just because we're still asking questions and trying to make sure we have all the mechanics of this character down. I think we mostly do. Hard. Hard boss. Retro Flow in the chat said this is the greatest boss design I've ever seen. Yeah, I mean you can't. I don't. I doesn't. I just I don't even have words right now. This is just next level stuff. So, and then I mentioned that there are going to be 3 new items in this DLC, all of which are summer themed. Here's one of them. This is our Sky Umbrella. You know, this is why I like liner notes so much, because, you know, this card is pretty straightforward. It's an image of a freaking umbrella, right? Like, this could be very uninteresting. And yet, that is a beautiful umbrella, right? Like, beautifully illustrated, beautiful colors, how it pops against the background of the card itself, beautiful. I mean, just like, and then they add this, you know, in the top right corner here, this little icon that says summer. I mean, it's just, you know, sometimes I feel bad for being sort of like a fanboy of the designers that we work with. I will make no apologies for being a fanboy of Liner Note and everything they produce in the karate world, because it's just top shelf stuff, all the way down to a freaking umbrella. So, Puma Rhapsody is, I think, going to be a really cool DLC. I think it's going to add a lot of replayability, and it's again a very different type of experience than the first DLC. The first DLC was very story heavy. You know, not only do you get your story cards that kind of create this choose your own adventure type experience, but the narrative that's included in those files is pretty lengthy. I mean, it's not super lengthy, but it's lengthy enough. A couple pages of single space text. So it was very focused on telling a story and then kind of put gameplay around that story. This is a little different. This is a little lighter on story and more about gameplay. So it's like the story has been built around the mechanics and the gameplay, which is cool because it's great having DLCs that serve very different purposes and that complement one another in that regard. Laniston in the chat said, "This is what happens when you swallow the watermelon seeds in the Kratia world. My mom always warned me of vines growing out my ears, but this takes the cake." Absolutely. I think that's what happened here. The Summer Buster ate one too many juicy melons, which I think is the term that we've settled on for watermelon in the Kratia universe, juicy melons. And and this is what's happened. So, Lanison, your mother was right. All right, so that's a little bit on the DLC. Okay, so we're hoping to have this DLC to you all by the end of the month, but it's probably going to be like early August. Within the next 4 to 6 weeks, you'll have this DLC. And then we have our third DLC coming in the fall. So you'll be getting kind of like, incremental content for Wild Hunt Festival to keep you coming back. And hopefully you do come back each time there's new DLC. Speaking of reasons to come back to Wild Hunt Festival, let me take another drink. One moment. All right, so thinking about the reasons for wanting to continue to engage with a game. If you know of our last 2 Kickstarters, if you backed our most recent 2 Kickstarters, Gun and Embryo Machine, you know that they're competitive games. They're mostly competitive card games. And because of that, we are building a virtual league around them where we give folks a virtual space to play in a league that we keep track of all the points and standings for, and we provide prizes for. It's been a great way, and it will be a great way to provide folks an outlet to play our games while the world figures out what to do about in-person events. It's a complicated situation right now with in-person events, right? A lot of stores have brought them back, and a lot of players have gone back, and there are still some players that aren't comfortable with that. We want to make sure that everyone who wants to play our games with other people has a way to do that, and we're doing that through our virtual leagues for Gun and Embryo Machine, hosted through our Discord, pretty much like what we did with the Gun and Gun event that happened back in May, Operation Bulletstorm. Well, I was thinking about Wild Hunt Festival, and I was thinking, you know what, I want folks to have something to look forward to with Wild Hunt Festival, not just DLC stuff, because you'll be able to look forward to that as well, but I wanted something with more regularity. I wanted a way to have folks play with other people and be able to do it on a regular basis, and for it to mean something. Now, every time you play a game, it doesn't have to mean something. In fact, I would say most of the time it doesn't need to mean anything. For some people, they'll want it to mean something every time. For me personally, it doesn't always have to mean something. And most of the time, it doesn't have to mean something for me to have fun and for me to make memories. And that's oftentimes why I play tabletop games, is to make memories with friends. But it's hard to deny that having a little added value through extra meaning can go a long way with games and to create a community around a game. It's really easy to do that for competitive games because people show up expecting that kind of thing. But people that don't play competitive games still want to engage with the game they like so much, and they want to engage in that game with other people, right? So I thought, you know what? Wild Hunt Festival is not a competitive game, but that doesn't mean we can't have a competitive side to Wild Hunt Festival. So soon we're going to be revealing more details about this. Sin Theory and Real Beans, our 2 community leads, we're all talking about this and kind of putting together the details on it. We are going to be hosting a bit of a virtual league for Wild Hunt Festival, separated by seasons, where players join one of 3 guilds and play in duos with folks from their guild to earn points, both individually and for their guild. At the end of the season, the guild with the most points wins the season. They get special prizes. The players across all 3 guilds who are the top points earners, the 4 players who are the top points earners from whatever guilds at the end of the season get put into a single team, a team of 4, and they get to play this final boss encounter. Now, it's a boss encounter where the odds are not stacked in their favor at all. In many ways, it'll be designed for for players to lose. But should those players, who theoretically will be the 4 best players out of the season, should they be able to topple whatever that encounter is and whatever it entails, they will then earn extra prizes that will only be available to those 4 people. These battles, over the course of the season, some will be straightforward boss battles. Others, not so much. It won't always be just about defeating the boss. Sometimes it'll be about how quickly, how many turns you can defeat the boss in. Sometimes it'll be about satisfying certain battle conditions. Sometimes you will be fighting bosses at an intentional disadvantage. The decisions you make throughout each of these boss battles will award you points, and that ultimately will determine the leaderboard. The plan here is for this to be sort of an ongoing thing. It'll be separated by seasons, so there'll be an ending point for each, a start and an end for each season. But each season will come with its own, unique situations, unique boss battles, unique win conditions, as well as unique prizes. We are going to be starting this league, which still doesn't have a name. We spent a lot of time today talking about names for this, so we're not ready to reveal a name yet. It's going to be starting pretty soon. It's not like this is something we're going to do like a long lead up to. This will be happening. This will be starting in August, and probably the first part of August, not the second part of August. So you'll be playing in duos because we want people to play together. We thought about, let's just have people be able to play solo and earn points for themselves and for their guilds that way. But we decided, no. Although Wild Hunt Festival is very much so a solo game, it's 1 to 4 players for a reason. And so we want to be able to pull upon that. Now, getting 4 people together over using cameras in every Discord, kind of a logistical clusterfuck, right? So we thought, all right, we can't do 4 people. We'll do 4 people for the culmination battle at the end of the season, every season. But up until then, we're just going to do duos. That's much easier to coordinate. So in most cases, players will control 2 characters. Now, there will be some battles where you're only going to control one character, but there'll still only be 2 of you, and you'll still have to fight the boss, and it'll be scaled for 4 players. It's part of the fun. So this is going to be starting in August. We got a lot of work cut out for ourselves to get this ready. In the Kradia lore, there are guilds. There's the Adventurers Guild, primarily, as it pertains to what we're doing with Wild Hunt Festival. So, the story is, for Wild Hunt Festivals, in Eastern Kradia, where this story takes place, the Adventurers Guild has this thing that they call the Wild Hunt Festival every year. It's where they invite would-be adventurers from around the world to come and to slay monsters. And it's for notoriety, it's for fame, it's for experience, what have you. Within the larger Adventurers Guild in Kradia, there are sort of like chapters of that guild. So for Parali Village, which is where most of the story of Wild Hunt Festival takes place, Parali Village has the Parali Adventurers Guild. But then there's also the Cadore Provisional Adventurers Guild that exists in the western part of Eastern Kradia. Follow that for a minute, the western part of Eastern Kradia. We're going to be implementing a 3rd guild as it pertains to the actual lore. And essentially, we wanted this league to be a little thematic, where it feels like you're joining and you're fighting for the Parali Adventurers Guild, or you're fighting for the Cadore Provisional Adventurers Guild, or you're fighting for this 3rd guild. And so we wanted people to have they have a larger team that they're competing for, not just themselves, and at the same time still earning points for themselves. So there's going to be theme to this league, which is really exciting. It's that's something you don't necessarily always get with competitive games, because a competitive league is more just about the actual gameplay. It's about the meta. It's about the nuts and bolts of the actual gameplay. And very much so that's the case here. But we're going to be having some fun with it as well, with all of those win conditions and battlefield conditions. but we also wanted it to feel like Wild Hunt Festival. I mean, that's part of what makes a great cooperative game a great cooperative game, and that's because it's got this lore element that competitive games don't often have or can't have or whatever. And so we wanted to make sure that, we siphoned, that vibe into this particular league, and I think we're going to accomplish that. So, we'll be announcing more details about this in the coming weeks, sooner rather than later, again, because we're going to try to get this thing off the ground within the next 4 to 5 weeks. So you can expect more details on this very, very soon. Fry Guy Fern in the chat says, this event sounds sick as heck. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Fern. I think we're really onto something here. So this is pretty exciting. We've been talking about this for a little bit, Bean, Sin, and I. So, Sin in the chat said, I'm so hyped to work on all this. My mouth is broken. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm so hyped to work on this for y'all. Taking something that is thematic and co-op and pulling competitiveness out of it is so cool. Yeah, exactly what Sin said. It was to turn something that's not competitive into something that's competitive and at the same time still cooperative, I think is really fun. So, I'm excited by what this is going to offer folks. It'll definitely allow folks to engage with the game in a new way. And that's what's most appealing about it to me. Silent Frank says, fuck yeah, I'm in. I'm glad you're in, Frank. And I'm glad you're stoked. Okay. So, hour and 26 minutes later, I think I'm out of stuff to talk about right now. That was a lot of Wild Hunt Festival news, fulfillment stuff, DLC stuff, league stuff. I'm still sort of shocked that it's here, that it's upon us. That right now, as I speak, there are games of Wild Hunt Festival en route to you all. When you're in the thick of delays, it's hard to see the end. It's hard to see the finish line. You just think it's never going to come. And so for it to finally be here, I don't think it's fully set in. I mean, it has to some degree because I've been so excited about it. I was practically like dancing when I got that email from the fulfillment center saying like, hey, these are going out. But still, it still doesn't feel fully real just because I'm like, is this a sick joke? It's been delayed for so long. No, this can't be happening, right? But no, it's happening. I'm just so excited. I'm just so excited. Going to be streaming some Wild Hunt Festival quite soon. I hadn't played Wild Hunt Festival in a while. So on Friday or Saturday, I sat down with it and said, all right, I gotta refresh my brain on some Wild Hunt Festival. And that's what I did. And played through Route A of the story. Took down those 4 story bosses and had a blast doing so. So we're going to be streaming some Wild Hunt Festival. I might be streaming some just by myself. I might be streaming some with Beans and Sin. We're in Kradia mode. The Kradia train is here. Can't slow it down, baby. Can't slow it down. So I think that takes us to the end tonight. I appreciate y'all sticking with me. Appreciate y'all checking out another episode of LionWing Talks. And above all else, truly, I appreciate y'all's patience on this. I know it's not fun to put down money on a product, money that you'll never get back. Like when you spend money, you never get that money again. You can make more money, but you'll never get that money back. So to have you all spend your money, your hard-earned money, on a product, and then have to be told that it's delayed a couple times, and have to wait 7 months, 8 months past when it was originally promised, and to still be so cool about it and so patient. And maybe some people weren't patient, but they didn't really say it. Or if they did say it, they said it nicely. And that means a lot. You know, it's not fun to have to be the person. Like I think people think like owning a game company is like this really fun, cool thing. And like most of the time it is. But with all the cool stuff and all the fun stuff you get to take credit for, you also have to own up to the shit that you do wrong, to the bad decisions that you make, or to the things that happen that were outside of your control, but it still reflects on you and it still affects your customers. And that's not the fun stuff. But it like that comes with the territory. And so I appreciate people allowing us some grace, allowing me some grace with this delay, with the multiple delays and how long it's taken to get this to you all. I just really appreciate it. It means a lot. Y'all could have been pissed. Y'all could have brought up the pitchforks and told me to go fuck myself and ask for a refund. And no one did. No one did. You know, I don't forget things like that. So I really appreciate it. It means a lot. But I'm glad that we're past all of it. And that the day is upon us, right? Frank said, you're going to play it on stream? Yeah, I am going to play it on stream. Wild Hunt Festival is a really good game to play on stream. Minimal components, small components. You can catch it all on camera pretty well. So really ideal for streaming. So I will definitely be playing some. I played some over the weekend, like I said, just to kind of get acclimated to it, but I'm not going to play it anymore until I go on stream. I just want to... I played it just to like get back in the swing of the mechanics and get back into the cadence of the game and to refresh my mind on the rules. But I'm not going to play anymore until I get on stream. That way, if I'm terrible, then I'm just going to be terrible on stream, and that's part of the fun. So I'm excited. I'm excited for that. Sin Theory, one of our own community leads, says, I mean, if it wasn't for karate, I wouldn't be here. Yeah. A lot of people, their first project was Wild Hunt Festival. So I appreciate those folks whose first gamble on us was Wild Hunt Festival, because I think it's going to pay off. I hope it does. I hope you like it. I hope people are happy with it. And I hope you're happy with everything that we've got lined up. Just because Kratia is launching, it's going to be in your hands in the next couple of weeks, doesn't mean, this isn't a fire and forget kind of game. I've mentioned, and I think I mentioned in the first or second or third episode, that it was really important early on in the lifespan of LionWing that we established like an evergreen product, something that's going to be around for a while that people can keep coming back to. And while I think it's important to cycle in new product and in new worlds, new gameplay experiences, and new designers, I think as a company, you want a couple kind of like core pillars that people can always show up for, that people can always count on. And without question, Kratia is one of our pillars. It's one of our evergreen products. So as long as Liner Note is putting out Kratia games, we will be on board, so long as they'll have us to publish those for the West. So, although Kratia is also the reason I spent so much on Kickstarters this last year, it opened the floodgates for me. Yeah, Sin, did you tell me, I feel like just recently, that was Wild Hunt Festival your first Kickstarter ever? I feel like you just said that last week. I think that's right. Yes. Okay. First Kickstarter ever. I'm glad we could be your first, Sin. And then, I mean, life has a funny way of working out, because that's your first foray into Kickstarters. Then you spend all this money on other Kickstarters that you presumably like too. And then you end up as one of the community leads for the company who you first took a chance on with crowdfunding. So it's just, life has a funny way of plotting out courses for people. So thank you all. I think that takes us to the end. We'll be doing this again, of course, next Wednesday, because we do it every Wednesday, even when I'm deathly ill or when I've just been discharged from the hospital, like I was in like episode 4 or something, or episode 3. I'm still here for LionWing Talks. So Wednesdays, 9 p.m. ET on Twitch. We have a less regular show called LionWing Plays. It's sort of a sister show where we stream ourselves playing LionWing games, and that will be the show where I stream and play some Wild Hunt Festival. So it's not as regular. I think actually we're sort of gravitating naturally toward like a bi-weekly schedule. We are shooting for every week, but I think bi-weekly probably makes a little bit more sense. But when it's just me streaming, I might it's a little easier to coordinate when you only have to coordinate around your own schedule. So we'll definitely let you know when we are going to stream, though, with LionWing Plays, and certainly when we're going to stream some Wild Hunt Festival. Lanniston in the chat said, for me, Cradia was one of those less expensive games compared to others I backed, but seems like one I'll end up playing a lot more than the huge games. I hope so. I hope so, Lanniston. I hope the game resonates with you. I hope you like it. And that's always been one of the things that I keep in mind. One of the things that LionWing's sort of business model is based around is affordable games. Not that we won't do some big games, that are a little bit more expensive, but certainly, so far our track record indicates we like that sub $50 game. If I can get it to 40, I feel real good. If I can get to 35, I feel even better. Money's a hard thing to come by, and yet I think it's important that we still play games, no matter how much or how little money we have. And so I try to make our games as affordable as possible. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm running a business, so I got to make sure the business is profitable so we can continue to produce these games and these inexpensive games. But certainly I try to make them as affordable as possible while allowing us to still be a viable entity. And so, 35 for Wild Hunt Festival felt good. Now, the retail is not that, so people who pre-order or who pick up at retail will pay more than that, but that price point felt really good for Cradia. And I mean, we added so much content for the game through Kickstarters. It was cool that we offered an affordable game with a lot of content, and then with these additional DLC packs, and then with even the league, which isn't going to give you content, but it's going to give you new objectives, almost like an achievement system, because you'll have to play the game in ways you normally wouldn't play. I think also just extends the game's life. And anytime that you can extend a game's life and keep people interested in one of your products, it's a win. It's a win for the player because they're having fun. It's a win for the company because it's like, hey, you're keeping us in mind, you're keeping LionWing in mind, you're keeping the Cradia universe alive for us, so that way when we revisit it, you're ready for the next thing that Cradia has in store. And so if we can help keep people engaged with a particular product, or with all of our products ideally, right, I think everyone wins. So all right, now we really are done. So thank you all again. We'll do this again next week, and be on the lookout for that Kickstarter update, which will go up tonight or tomorrow. Though, spoiler, if you just watch this whole show, you know it's going to be in the Kickstarter update. So you got the news early. All right, until next time, folks. Take care.